City and speak with Emma Vigeland. She's the political correspondent and producer for the progressive news site, The Young Turks. Great to have you back, Emma. Now, I see you tweeted a little bit on the platform, responding to the fact that it did not include the Medicare For All position that progressives want to see. You then added this statement: progressives are struggling to gain leverage as Biden surges and the DNC is rubbing our faces in it. So I want to get your reaction to the platform as it's been now proved.
So it wasn't just Medicare for All that the DNC decided to nix in their platform committee vote. It was overwhelmingly nixed from the platform. But there were more incrementalist approaches, like trying to ensure that Medicare was expanded from the age of 65 to 55, or expanding the program to children. It's one of those most popular programs in the United States, and for good reason. Progressives want to ensure that everyone can have access to it, has Medicare for All, so that people don't lose their health insurance in the middle of a pandemic, for example. And it was shot down, even those smaller approaches. And that's why I would say they are rubbing our faces in it. They don't want to even crack the door on Medicare for All, because there is a lot of health insurance money in the Democratic Party, unfortunately. Now, what's crazy to me is that there isn't enough of a reckoning in the middle of a pandemic. Between February and May, 5.4 million Americans lost their health insurance because they lost their jobs due to the economic shutdown caused by COVID-19 that we needed to do. That's crazy to me. Right. And the Democratic Party, even though single-payer healthcare, Medicare for All, is a very popular proposal, they won't go that far, but they won't even go as far as to expand Medicare to people ages 55 to 65. And that's what's frustrating. Progressives, honestly, I've been on the show before. What leverage do we have here right now? Unfortunately, the pandemic, the circumstances, people are craving normalcy. And so it's really hard to push for more substantive changes, especially when Biden is so far ahead in the polls and looks unstoppable at this point.
Right. I want to focus on the Israel issue. Of course, in that platform there, that was language that basically said that it did, for example, condemn unilateral moves by Israel or the Palestinians, but it said that security aid to Israel is ironclad. Now, I did see that you retweeted a tweet by the journalist Glenn Greenwald, where you basically kind of he criticizes that he wrote annexation was among the worst crimes a nation could commit and must be punished. Yesterday, 131 members of the DNC platform committee voted against denying U.S. aid to Israel if they annex the West Bank. So how progressives are disappointed would they be on the Israel positions in the platform?
I'm certainly disappointed. Now, I believe that the annexation is illegal, and that's because by international law, it is illegal. And I don't believe that Israel is going to change, especially under Netanyahu or their actions. And again, this is purely because the president is a far right-winger. I'm not speaking generally about Israeli governments in history. There have been left-wing presidents, but Netanyahu is far right. And he exemplifies that in his very actions by flouting international law. And yet the Democratic Party, in its infinite weakness, decides, no, we're going to give no incentive to follow international law. Israel can get aid. That's our official position of the Democratic Party, no matter what, and no matter what their actions are. And especially as the Democrats are so well positioned heading into November, this was the time to take stronger positions. But it's not in the Democratic establishment's DNA to do that. They're weak and feckless by design and by nature.
So that sort of begs the question, Emma, when you were on a previous appearance on our show, I think last year, when Bernie Sanders was the front runner, and I asked you, theoretically, could Joe Biden count on the votes of his supporters on progressives? You kind of shot me down and said, of course they will, and they did with Hillary Clinton. Now, seeing what's developed here, are you certain that progressives will vote for Joe Biden? I have to ask, would you vote for Joe Biden?
I'm voting for Joe Biden. I've made that clear. I think a lot of progressives will vote for Joe Biden. The urgency of the moment has been clearly communicated by many progressive activists, leaders, people on our side. They understand that Donald Trump is an existential threat to the United States. He's demonstrated that in our economic collapse, the worst since the Great Depression, something that is going to have ripple effects for decades to come. The eviction crisis is looming. Homelessness is going to be skyrocketing. People are in debt. The Republicans are trying to give tax cuts for the rich as Americans are out on the streets. I mean, let alone the racial unrest, let alone the science-denying coronavirus mass deaths. People understand the threat that Donald Trump is. And I think, as I pushed back in my last appearance, the Bernie or Bust coalition is overstated by the media because, as exit polls have shown, a larger proportion of Sanders voters went to vote for her in the general election than Clinton voters did for Obama in 2008. So Bernie or Bust, I think it's more just a fabrication due to online aggressiveness by Sanders supporters than anything reflected in actual voting.
All right, well, we'll have to see how that develops. Certainly there are polls that show that the core of President Trump supporters are more enthusiastic than those for Joe Biden, but I guess it'll be all about voter turnout come November. Emma Vigeland of the Young Turks, thank you for joining us on i24.